if we made an inverted U that went this way and that went this way, then what we would see is that in the middle, the rhythms of human attachment are connected, but not too synchronous. That there's a golden mean, in a way, of rhythmic connection. And that this rhythm is something that actually persists as we go on into our grown-up lives and is a part of our work with the contracts. So there's this sort of Goldilocks just right place where we're rhythmic enough, but not too intrusive and not too far away. And if we go out in this direction, then we're going into the dysregulated right hemisphere. We become too rhythmic. We become too synchronous. My baby smiles and I smile immediately. My baby has a still face. My face stays absolutely still with her. And then if we go the other way, then we're too disparate. We move out this way, we move out of relational space, we move into the instrumental brain, we move into the place where we're getting things done. The part of the brain that gets things done doesn't understand relationship. It doesn't understand rhythm. It doesn't know it's supposed to respond. So here I am in connection with my baby's face. Whatever my baby's face does, it doesn't matter. What matters to me is my baby's face dirty? There's not a relational interaction. So you see, not enough relational connection over here. Too much relational connection over here, right? On this side, I'm just learning this from Beatrice Beebe, who is the most amazing researcher on the planet, who has been doing close video contact recording with moms and babies for 40 years. Within 3 minutes of one video of a mom and baby playing together, she can tell what attachment style that baby is going to have in 8 months at a year old. It's extraordinary. We are fractals. Every moment of our relational connection is a fractal for the kind of attachment style that we have. For this question of, are we here in the middle space where there's enough connection, but not too much and not too little, where we get to actually be in relational space, where we are moved by one another and changed by one another. Because over here, we're not moved and changed by one another, we're like twinning each other. Over here, we're not moved and changed by each other because we're not in relational space. Is this making sense? Yeah. Okay, so if you go way far out, then you get into disorganized and traumatic attachment. So on this side, you get out into the place of attachment where it's codependence, where you don't exist outside of the other, where either the mother is completely subsumed within the baby or the baby is completely subsumed inside the mother. And at this end, you get out to absolute neglect and cruelty, where there's a punitive harshness instead of a responsive relationality. Is this making sense? Okay, so here's the thing. Wherever we are on this inverted U, in our rhythmic interaction with other humans, we are healed by constellation work. Our work with constellation work takes us toward this middle space. But since we weren't born here, it wasn't original secure attachment. But instead, it's earned secure attachment. When we're in earned secure attachment, this is the steady place. We become more resilient to trauma here than if we're born into secure attachment. If we're born into secure attachment, it's just very good. It's very good for our health and well-being. But if we hit trauma bumps, we have no skills to deal with them. But if we hit trauma bumps now that we're in earned secure attachment, we know the scaffolding to put up. We know the ladders to climb. We know how to reach out for support. So this is a very good place, the earned secure place. And we, as constellation facilitators, are in a continual process, however we work, of providing people with the framework to come back again and again to a very resilient place, to the earned secure place. So that's the overview of attachment that helps us begin to understand what I want you to know from Beatrice Beebe's research. I mentioned this yesterday for people who were in the class, that by the age of 4 months, a baby, an infant, is born with a full range of facial expression. A baby is born to cry with rage, to wail with grief, to by the time they're 4 months old, to be laughing with joy. A baby is born to express startle, to express surprise, to express fear with their gestures, with their face, with the tone of their voice. We as humans can tell what another person's emotion is within 13 milliseconds. We can tell from the tone of their voice what kind of emotion is in their voice. We are tracking in ways that we don't even know or understand. That 13 millisecond, I can't remember if that's right. So anyway, we'll say in a very short amount of time, we can tell whether somebody is has sadness in their voice, or whether someone has contempt in their voice, or whether someone has joy in their voice. And if we're in this space, we're in relationship with that. It affects us, we notice, we understand. If we're over here, our brain is taking it in, but we're not necessarily processing it. If we're over here, we're knocked off balance by other people's emotional experience, right? So by the age of 4 months, an infant has limited their facial expression vocabulary exactly to the facial expression vocabulary that their mother is able to do. So whoever their mothering person is, whoever is closest to the baby in those first 4 months, it can be a fathering person, it can be a grandmothering person, it doesn't matter. What's important for the baby is that they begin to integrate exactly the facial expressions that their culture of their family is able to easily reflect. So just a moment to breathe. Just in acknowledgement of the importance of the people who cared for us when we were tiny, and the stamp that they left on our nervous systems. So here's the next question. How is this connected with this contract work, with this unconscious contract work? Joy, which is our natural expression of play and our natural expression of our life energy, is the most vulnerable of all emotions. It is most vulnerable to whether or not the people who are with us are able to be in relational space, to be in this part of the inverted U, and to be able to encourage and support the expression of joy. The way that mothers do this without even knowing that they're doing this, and fathers do this without even knowing that they're doing this, is that the baby smiles a little bit and the mother smiles a little bit more. And the baby smiles a little bit more and the mother smiles a little bit more. So there's like a tracking and a pacing that the mother does where she's just offering the baby. Does the baby want to go a little farther? If the baby doesn't, then she follows and goes smaller again. But if the baby wants to expand joy, the mother's like, yes, I know this territory. I will take you into joy. And if the mother doesn't, then the mother smiles smaller than the baby, which is a neurobiological absolute signal for human bodies that we're getting too big and that we need to stay smaller. And so, how do we touch this? When we've been touched, when our sense of whether or not it's okay to even exist as our joyous and original self, how do we touch this way in which we made an agreement with ourselves or with our mothering people to limit our life energy. We can actually touch this with words, and we can actually feel this in the negative messages that we give ourselves. So just take a moment right now, if you have a pen and you would like to do this, just to write down any of the negative messages that you know that you carry, that you hear yourself telling yourself inside of your own brain. Okay. Did everybody get a chance to write down something or other? Okay. So now, here's the thing about words that's important to begin to understand. Words are medicine. We can use words in ways that support brains to change and grow and heal and flourish. And we can use words in ways that stop brains from changing and flourishing. The two kinds of language, or the division that I make between them, is language that we're using to get things done or to blame people. That's instrumental language. That's not in relational space. And language that we're using to sink into the present moment with one another. So, for example, brush your teeth doesn't change anybody's brain. I wonder if you are sad today. This is language that begins to make an opening for brain change. Our emotions move through our brains to bring us meaning. If we're not connected to our emotions, we don't get to be connected to our meaning. So part of what we're doing with this funny legalese language is we're inviting the brain to step into a consideration of something surprising, of the idea that something that we've always thought was just some truth about ourselves, but actually isn't. We're surprising our brain into finding the deep, deep longings to love, save, protect, honor, to keep our parents from being alone, to make sure that we are not scorned or humiliated, to accompany ourselves, to accompany others. There's deep love that lies beneath these contracts, to think about ourselves in certain ways.